Well, thank you, Dev. That was a very wonderful, generous introduction. And Minister McKenna, thank you for your inspiring words. And a bit of competition is not a bad thing, especially if it is heading us toward an energy transition and a better climate environment for our children and beyond. So I'll just dive right in, just to introduce myself and Alaska Airlines to all of you. If you go to the next slide, we are the 5th largest US airline. I'm afraid we do not currently fly to Ottawa, although that is something that we'll look forward to in the future. We do fly to Western Canada, all the West Coast. And, if you think about this map in terms of climate impact, food security and land stability up in the Alaskan communities, all the way down the West Coast and Hawaii, climate impact is very real. We've seen that every year the last few years with the tremendous wildfires in California, and we are very committed to doing our part to move in the right direction. I will note, just on a Canadian front, that our CEO grew up in Montreal, and served in the Canadian military. So we have strong ties across the border. So if you go to the next slide, aviation is one of the most tremendously difficult sectors to decarbonize. So I appreciate being at the front of this agenda and sort of maybe being able to seed a few challenges here and some opportunities. And Dev, I appreciate your partnership and sort of helping us think about the way forward. So I won't go through this entire graphic. It is online if it's of interest, but there are just so many different places that we have climate impact. And that's what this is intended to illustrate. We burn 750 million gallons of fuel a year. And in getting people from one place to another, we inherently burn jet fuel. And so the challenge for us is, how do you eliminate the need to burn, and how do you replace that with a lower emissions, lower carbon life cycle alternative? In our ground services equipment, as Dev said, we're currently 34% electric ground services equipment. That's belt loaders, tugs, all the vehicles on the airport floor, and lots of opportunity to continue moving in the right direction there. So we've set some goals for ourselves. If you go to the next slide, we have set a course to get to net zero by 2040. And we've got a 5-part path that I'll share with you. However, we know that the interim milestones to get there are really critical. So working kind of back up the slide, for 2025, we and other airlines are intending to maintain carbon neutral growth. Alaska has set our sights on being the most fuel efficient US airline that's working every bit of waste out of the system so that we can reduce our emissions. And specifically for ground services equipment, cutting climate emissions in half. So that is the electric fleet, the lower emissions fleet on the ground that Dev spoke of. And because every year matters, we have actually integrated a carbon efficiency metric into our annual incentive pay program for every single one of our employees starting this year. How much carbon per essentially seat that we put into the market, airplane seat, and trying to get that down every year. So if you go to the next slide, how do we do this? It is an incredibly difficult challenge to think about how to get to net zero. And just to be honest, that's 19 years. We don't know every step of the way. But what we've done is look at the current environment, the current trajectory of technology change, policy, et cetera, and made some calculated assumptions about what we believe the fraction of each of these 5 parts will be to get us to net zero, with credible carbon offsets being the last resort. The underlying sort of foundation is operational efficiency. And that includes things like electric tugs, belt loaders, all of the things that we use within the operation, our ground vehicles, and moving those toward electric with the right infrastructure to support them over time to get every bit of waste out of excess carbon out of the system. It also includes flight operations, route optimization, other things. Evolving our fleets, the next one, sustainable aviation fuel. And then you get to novel propulsion, which essentially is the emerging technology to allow, and we believe in the next 20 years, our regional aircraft. So the smaller aircraft, maybe 50 to 72 seats to get toward electric. That's farther off than electric vehicles, but it is something we have our sights on and something that we want to achieve. And then finally, carbon offsets, credible carbon offsets to close the gap. So to the last slide, what do we need to do to get in this direction? And this is just to sort of seed future conversation. Every single one of these things matters. Manufacturing, certain things like de-icing trucks, which are very necessary up in Alaska and in other parts of the West Coast, including here in Seattle, don't currently come in available electric form. So making sure that those are available. Infrastructure needs, data to track and manage our fleet so that we're using it effectively and getting it to the right charging infrastructure, training, et cetera. A couple challenges and opportunities that I'll throw out there. We operate from the Arctic to, the desert, and we have to have battery-powered vehicles that will work in all of those environments with the right infrastructure. And so that's sort of the operational reliability test for us, is making sure that the electric vehicles are strong enough and durable enough to withstand that environmental variation. On a policy front, a lot of opportunity there. We do need a little bit more of a kickstart. However, Senator Cantwell, senator from our great state of Washington, just introduced last week a bill called the Fast Electricity Act, which will offer a 30% investment credit for moving toward electric vehicles in all areas of transportation. So there's a lot of challenge. There's a lot of opportunity. I really look forward to learning from all of my colleagues here on the panel about what they're doing in other parts of transportation. So Dev, hope that just kind of tees things up, and back over to you.